They say revenge is a bullet with your name on it. Mine had a name too, Silas Crane. The night my world turned to ash, I was 23 years old. I remember the smell. Not just smoke, but something sweeter, more terrible. The smell of a life burning down. I was in the barn when I heard my daughter scream. By the time I kicked through the door, flames were already crawling up the walls of my homestead like hungry demons, orange and gold against the black Wyoming sky. My wife Caroline was on the porch, not standing, not moving, just there. And my little girl Emma, 5 years old with her mother's green eyes, was crying in a way that didn't sound human anymore, the kind of crying that comes from seeing things a child should never see. I ran toward them, but that's when I saw him. Silas Crane sat on his blood-bay stallion at the edge of my property, silhouetted against my burning home like the devil himself. 6 men flanked him, their faces hidden by shadows and neckerchiefs. But I knew him. Everyone in the Bitter Creek Valley knew Silas Crane, railroad man, land baron, killer. He'd been buying up homesteads for months, making offers that were really threats. I'd refused him 3 times. Should have taken my offer, Tobias Mercer. His voice cut through the roar of flames, smooth as snake oil. Should have took it when it was generous. I drew my revolver, an old Colt Navy my father had carried through the war. But one of his men was faster. The shot hit me high in the chest, spun me around. I went down hard, tasted copper and dirt. Through the haze of pain, I watched them ride away, slow and easy, like men who'd done nothing more than finish a day's work. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was Emma's small hand reaching out from the porch. And then, nothing. I should have died that night. Any reasonable man would have. But God or the devil or something in between had other plans for Tobias Mercer. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was high, and the crows were circling. The homestead was a blackened skeleton. My family was gone. Everything was gone. Everything except the rage. An old Arapaho woman named Many Clouds found me 3 days later, more dead than alive. She pulled me back from the edge, treated my wound with herbs and prayers I didn't understand. When fever dreams took me, I saw Caroline and Emma calling from the other side of a river I couldn't cross. When I finally woke, truly woke, Many Clouds told me something that changed everything. The man you seek, the one with death in his eyes, he rides to a place called Carrion's Gate, far east where the Wasteland begins, 400 miles, maybe more. But you, she touched my chest where the bullet had torn through. You already a ghost, Tobias Mercer. Ghosts can walk anywhere. That was 4 weeks ago. Now I'm walking east into the setting sun that turns the Badlands the color of blood. My boots are worn through, my canteens down to the last few swallows. The wound in my chest aches with every breath, but I keep walking. 400 miles, one step at a time, because Silas Crane took everything from me, and before I die, truly die, I'm going to take everything from him. They say the wasteland between Wyoming and Carrion's Gate will kill a man in a dozen different ways. Thirst, heat, outlaws, things worse than outlaws. I've walked 200 miles so far, and I've already seen enough to know the stories aren't exaggerations. But every time I think about stopping, about letting the desert take me, I see Emma's hand reaching out. I hear Caroline's last breath, and I keep walking. My name is Tobias Mercer. I was a farmer, a husband, a father. Now I'm something else, something the wasteland made. And Silas Crane is going to learn that some men don't stay dead when you kill their families. Some men come back. Some men walk 400 miles through hell itself for one chance, just one chance, to look their devil in the eye and pull the trigger. This is the story of those 400 miles. This is the story of what I became in the crossing. And this is the story of the reckoning waiting at the end of the road. Welcome to the Wasteland. The town of Salvation Creek had been dead for 5 years, but nobody'd bothered to bury it. I stumbled in around midday, halfway through my 2nd week of walking. The heat was biblical, the kind that makes you see things that aren't there. At first, I thought the town was another mirage, shimmering like a fever dream on the horizon. But mirages don't have shadows. and as I got closer, I could see the long, dark fingers of buildings stretching across the cracked earth. There were maybe 20 structures total, all of them leaning like drunks against each other. A saloon with its sign hanging by one rusty chain. A general store with windows like empty eye sockets. A church with a steeple that pointed at God like an accusing finger. The whole place had the feeling of a graveyard. Not peaceful, but waiting. Watching. I needed water. My canteen had run dry that morning, and my tongue felt like leather in my mouth. The town well stood in what used to be the main square, and I approached it the way a man approaches a rattlesnake. Slow and respectful. The rope was still there, the bucket still attached. When I hauled it up, the water that came was brown and probably poison, but I drank it anyway. Better to die of bad water than no water at all. That's when I heard the voice. "You got a death wish, stranger?" I spun, hand going to the Colt at my hip. A woman stood in the doorway of the saloon, half hidden in shadow. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back severe and eyes that had seen too much. She wore men's clothes, canvas pants, a dusty shirt, a gun belt that looked well used. In her hand was a Winchester rifle, not quite pointed at me, but not quite pointed away either. "Just need water," I said, my voice rough as gravel. "I'll be moving on." "That water'll give you the flux so bad you'll wish the bullet had finished you," she said, nodding at the wound on my chest, visible through my torn shirt. "Come inside. I got clean water, and whiskey, if you're the paying kind." I should have kept walking. Every instinct told me not to trust strangers in dead towns. But the sun was hot, my legs were shaking, and something in her eyes didn't feel like a threat. It felt like recognition, like she'd seen men like me before. Hollow men, ghost men, men with nothing left to lose. The saloon was cooler inside, though not by much. Dust motes floated in the slats of light coming through the broken windows. She poured me water from a clay jug, and it was sweet and cold and maybe the best thing I'd ever tasted. I drank 3 cups before I could speak again. "What's your name?" she asked, sitting across from me at a table that had seen better decades. "Tobias Mercer." "Vera Kane." She paused. "You're hunting someone." It wasn't a question. I nodded anyway. "Man named Silas Crane, killed my family, burned my home, left me for dead." Vera's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, something dark and familiar. "Crane, railroad baron, has half the territory in his pocket and the other half under his boot." She leaned forward. "You know where he is?" "Carrion's Gate, 400 miles east." She let out a long breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Carrion's Gate, Hell's front door. You plan to walk the whole way?" "Already walked 200. Now she did laugh, a short, sharp sound. "You're either the toughest son of a bitch I've ever met or the craziest. Maybe both." She stood, walked to the bar, came back with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "I'm going to tell you something, Tobias Mercer. Something you need to hear before you walk another mile." She poured 2 drinks, pushed one across to me. 5 years ago, Salvation Creek was a real town. 300 people, farms, ranches, families. Then Crane's railroad company decided this was where the tracks needed to go. He made offers. People refused. So he brought in his men, the Scorpions they called themselves. They didn't just kill people, they made examples. Her hand tightened on the glass. They started with the mayor, hung him from the church steeple and left him there until the crows picked him clean. Then they went house to house. Anyone who wouldn't sell, anyone who wouldn't leave. They made them wish they had. Some died quick. Others, she took a long drink. Others died slow. "Why are you still here?" I asked. "Because I got nowhere else to go. And because I'm waiting." "For what?" She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the same thing that burned in my chest. The same cold, patient rage that had carried me 200 miles through the wasteland. "For the day someone comes along who's crazy enough to walk to Carrion's Gate and put a bullet in Silas Crane's head. For the day someone can do what I can't." We sat in silence for a while, drinking whiskey in a dead town in the middle of nowhere. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the empty streets like the ghosts of the 300 who used to live there. Finally, Vera stood. "You can stay here tonight. There's a room upstairs that's still got a bed. Get some rest. In the morning, I'll give you supplies, food, water, ammunition. And I'll tell you about the road ahead. Because if you're really going to walk the rest of that 400 miles, you need to know what's waiting out there." "Why help me?" I asked. She smiled, but it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "Because you're already dead, Tobias Mercer. Just like this town. Just like me. And maybe, just maybe, dead men are the only ones who can kill the devil." That night, I slept in a bed for the first time in 2 weeks. I dreamed of Emma reaching out to me, but when I tried to take her hand, it turned to smoke. I woke up with tears on my face and the taste of ash in my mouth. The road to Carrion's Gate was still long, but at least now I wouldn't walk it alone. Dawn came hard and red, painting the wasteland the color of an open wound. Vera was already awake when I came downstairs, spreading a map across the bar, old, stained, marked with notations in faded ink. "This is where we are." She pointed to a spot in the middle of what looked like nothing. "Salvation Creek. And this," her finger traced east across yellowed paper, "is the Bone Valley. 30 miles of the worst country you'll ever see. No water, no shade, and things that hunt in the heat shimmer." I leaned closer. The map showed a long, narrow valley between 2 ridges of hills, marked with dozens of small crosses. "What are those?" "Graves, or what's left of them. Bone Valley got its name honest." She rolled up the map, handed it to me along with a pack she'd prepared. Dried meat, hardtack, 2 full canteens, and a box of 36 caliber rounds for my Colt. 300 years ago, this was hunting ground for the Cheyenne and Arapaho. Sacred land. Then the Spanish came through looking for gold, a whole expedition, maybe 100 men. They went into that valley and never came out. Not alive, anyway. What happened to them? Vera's expression darkened. Depends who you ask. The tribes say the land itself swallowed them, that they disturbed something old and angry. White folks say it was thirst and heat and madness. All I know is every few years someone finds bones out there. Spanish armor, conquistador helmets. And sometimes, she hesitated. Sometimes people hear things in the valley, voices, calling them by name. I shouldered the pack. It was heavier than I expected, but the weight felt good, real. I've got to cross it, don't I? No way around? North route adds 100 miles through Comanche territory. South route goes through the Scorpion territories. Crane's men patrol it regular. Bone Valley's the only way if you want to live long enough to reach Carrion's Gate. She walked me to the door. Start at dusk. Walk through the night. The heat during the day will kill you before you make 10 miles, and Tobias, she grabbed my arm. If you hear voices calling your name, Caroline, Emma, anyone you love, don't answer. Don't even look. Just keep walking. I left Salvation Creek as the sun began its descent, painting long shadows across the dead town. Vera stood in the doorway of the saloon until I was just a speck on the horizon. I never saw her again, but sometimes when the wind's right, I think I can still hear that Winchester of hers, firing into the empty desert air. The entrance to Bone Valley came up around midnight. The temperature had dropped from hellish to merely brutal, and the moon was a thin silver crescent that gave just enough light to see by. The valley stretched before me like an open mouth, the ridges on either side like teeth, and scattered across the valley floor, gleaming white in the moonlight, were bones. Thousands of them. I'd seen death before, the war had taught me that, but this was different. These bones had been here so long they'd become part of the landscape, half buried in sand, bleached by sun and time. Rib cages rose from the earth like broken ships. Skulls watched me pass with empty sockets. And among the ancient bones I saw newer ones. A cavalry saber still in its scabbard. A leather boot with something inside it. A woman's locket, chain broken, lying in the dust. I walked, one foot in front of the other. The only sound was my breathing and the crunch of sand under my boots. Hours passed. The moon tracked across the sky. And then, about halfway through the valley, I heard it. Daddy. My heart stopped. I knew that voice. Emma's voice, small and scared, the way it sounded when she had nightmares. Daddy, where are you? I'm scared. It's dark. Every fiber of my being wanted to turn around, to call out to her, to run toward that voice. But I remembered Vera's warning. I kept walking, jaw clenched, hands shaking. Daddy, please, don't leave me here. Tears ran down my face, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. The voice followed me for what felt like hours. Sometimes Emma, sometimes Caroline, sometimes both together, begging me to come back, asking why I'd left them, screaming that they were burning and I'd done nothing to save them. But I kept walking, because whatever was out there in the dark using their voices like weapons, it wasn't them. The real Caroline, the real Emma, they were gone. And the only thing I could do for them now was finish what I'd started. Walk the 400 miles. Find Silas Crane. Make him pay. Just before dawn, the voices stopped. I stumbled out the eastern end of Bone Valley as the sun broke over the horizon, and I fell to my knees in the sand, sobbing like a child. Behind me, the valley lay quiet and patient, waiting for the next traveler desperate or foolish enough to try the crossing. I'd made it through, but the cost was higher than I'd expected, because now I knew the worst part of the wasteland wasn't the heat or the thirst or the danger. The worst part was being haunted by the ghosts of the people you loved, knowing they were dead, and having to hear their voices begging you to come back to them. I drank the last of my water, checked my compass, and started walking again. 230 miles down, 170 to go. The sun climbed higher, and the day grew hot, and somewhere ahead in the shimmer of heat, Carrion's Gate waited. And so did Silas Crane. The trading post appeared like a gift from heaven on my 16th day of walking. A low adobe structure built into the side of a red rock mesa, with a corral out front and a hand-painted sign that read, Murphy's Last Chance. Below it, in smaller letters, if you made it this far, you need what I'm selling. My water had run out 12 hours ago. The sun had baked me so thoroughly I'd stopped sweating. Never a good sign. I staggered toward the door like a drunk, barely able to lift my arm to knock. The door opened before my knuckles made contact. The man who stood there was ancient, maybe 70, with skin like tanned leather and eyes so pale blue they were almost white. He looked me up and down, lingered on the wound scar on my chest, then stepped aside without a word. Water, I croaked. Bar, he said, his voice surprisingly strong for someone so old. Drink slow, or you'll puke it right back up. I made it to the bar on sheer willpower and drank from the pitcher there like a dying man, which I suppose I was. True to his warning, I had to slow down after the third cup when my stomach started to rebel. When I could finally breathe again, I looked around. Murphy's Last Chance was part trading post, part museum of the wasteland. The walls were covered with pelts, weapons, strange artifacts I couldn't name. Behind the bar were bottles of liquor I'd never heard of, alongside more practical supplies, jerky, beans, ammunition. But what caught my eye was the wall behind Murphy, covered in wanted posters, dozens of them. And right in the center, larger than the rest, was Silas Crane. $5,000 reward, Murphy said, following my gaze. Dead or alive, though everybody knows dead is the only way he's coming in. Railroad's been trying to distance themselves from him for years, but he's got enough dirt on enough politicians that nobody moves against him directly. He poured himself a whiskey. You're hunting him. Again, not a question. I was learning that in the wasteland. Worn through boots and a chest wound told their own story. How much further to Carrion's Gate? I asked. 170 miles, give or take, but you got a problem. Murphy pulled out a map more detailed than Vera's, spread it on the bar. Between here and there is Blackwater Canyon, 30 miles long, walls so high the sun only touches the bottom for an hour at midday. It's the fastest route to Carrion's Gate. But it's also where the Maddox brothers have their hideout. Who are the Maddox brothers? Murphy's expression went grim. 3 of the meanest bastards you'll ever have the misfortune to meet. Bank robbers, murderers, worse. They hole up in Blackwater Canyon and rob anyone trying to pass through. And before you ask, no, you can't go around. North is Scorpion territory. South is a 100-mile detour through country that makes Bone Valley look friendly. I studied the map. Murphy was right. Blackwater Canyon was the only realistic route. How many men do the Maddox brothers have? Just the 3 of them. But they know that canyon like you know your own name. Set up ambush points, got hidden caves, tripwires. Last group that tried to force passage was 8 armed men. 3 made it out. Barely. What do you suggest? Murphy looked at me for a long moment, those pale eyes seeming to see right through me. Honestly, I suggest you give up this fool's errand. Crane's too well protected, too well connected. You're one man with a gut-shot wound that should have killed you, walking 400 miles to commit suicide. Even if you make it through Blackwater Canyon, even if you reach Carrion's Gate, you'll never get close enough to Crane to matter. You're probably right, I said, but I'm going anyway. Something shifted in Murphy's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of madness. Then I'll sell you something that might help. You got money? I pulled out the small leather pouch I kept in my shirt. It held everything I had left from selling our livestock before the burning. $37 in gold and silver. Murphy took 10 of it and disappeared into a back room. When he returned, he carried a weapon I'd never seen before. Sharp's rifle, he said, laying it on the bar. 50 caliber, accurate to 1,000 yards in the right hands. And this, he added a wooden case, is a special modification. Loads from the breech instead of the muzzle. Fast, deadly. The gun that won the war, some say. He also added a box of heavy cartridges. You know how to shoot? Passably. Then you better learn to shoot better. Because if you're taking on the Maddox brothers in Blackwater Canyon, you'll need every advantage you can get. I spent 2 days at Murphy's last chance, recovering my strength and learning the sharps. Murphy, for all his talk of giving up, turned out to be a patient teacher. We shot at targets set up on the mesa, and I learned the weight of the rifle, the kick, the way to adjust for wind and distance. It felt wrong somehow, spending time on anything other than walking toward Crane. But Murphy was right. If I died in Blackwater Canyon, I'd never get my revenge. On the second night, over whiskey and jerky, Murphy told me something I hadn't expected. Crane came through here 3 months ago, had 10 men with him, all armed to the teeth. Paid good money for supplies, paid better money for information about anyone who might be following him. Murphy poured another drink. I told him I hadn't seen nobody, but I'm telling you now, he knows someone's coming. Maybe not you specifically, but he knows someone's going to try for revenge eventually. He's ready for it. Doesn't matter, I said. I'm still going. Yeah, Murphy nodded slowly. I figured you'd say that. One more thing you should know about Blackwater Canyon. There's a girl there. Runs with the Maddox brothers, but she ain't like them. Name's Red Annie, on account of her hair. She was just a kid when they found her. Her family's wagon train got attacked by raiders. Maddox brothers saved her, raised her as their own. But she ain't a killer. She's their lookout, their eyes and ears. If you can get to her, talk to her before the brothers spot you, you might have a chance. I left Murphy's last chance at dawn on the 3rd day. The sharps strapped to my back. My Colt cleaned and loaded. My canteens full. Murphy stood in the doorway as I walked away, and this time he called after me. Tobias Mercer, you make it to Carrion's Gate, you make it to Silas Crane, you put a bullet in him for everyone whose lives he destroyed. You hear me? For all of us. I raised a hand in acknowledgement but didn't turn around, because if I looked back I might see Murphy for what he really was. Another ghost the Wasteland had claimed. Still standing, still fighting, but dead nonetheless. Just like Vera. Just like me. Blackwater Canyon was 3 days' walk. I could see it long before I reached it. A massive split in the earth, as if God had taken a knife to the desert and carved out a path. The walls were black basalt, hundreds of feet high, and from where I stood, I could see why the sun barely reached the bottom. This was where it would get dangerous. This was where men with guns would be waiting to kill me. And somewhere in that darkness, a girl with red hair who might be my only chance of surviving long enough to finish the journey. I checked my weapons, said a prayer to a god I wasn't sure was listening, and started down into Blackwater Canyon. 170 miles to go. But first, I had to survive the next 30. The entrance to Blackwater Canyon yawned before me, like the throat of some ancient beast. The temperature dropped 20 degrees the moment I stepped inside, from hellish to merely oppressive. The walls rose so high on either side that I had to crane my neck to see the strip of sky above, which had narrowed to a ribbon of blue. I walked for 3 hours before I saw the first body. It was strung up on the canyon wall, about 10 feet off the ground, arms spread wide like a grotesque crucifix. The rope was old and weathered, the body mostly skeletal, but the message was clear. Turn back now or join the decorations. I counted 7 more bodies as I continued deeper, all in various states of decay, all positioned where travelers couldn't miss them. The Maddox brothers wanted visitors to know exactly what happened to people who tried to pass through uninvited. The canyon floor was littered with the debris of failed crossings, wagon wheels, broken rifles, scattered belongings too worthless to steal. The path twisted and turned, offering 100 perfect ambush spots. I moved slow and careful, the Sharp's rifle in my hands, eyes scanning the walls above for any sign of movement. That's when I heard the whistle. It came from somewhere ahead and above, a high-pitched trill that echoed off the canyon walls. A signal. I dove behind a boulder just as the first shot rang out, the bullet striking where I'd been standing and throwing up a spray of dust and rock chips. "Hell of a gun you got there, friend," a voice called out from the heights, echoing so badly I couldn't pinpoint the source. "That's a Sharp's if I'm not mistaken. Where'd a half-dead traveler get money for a gun like that?" I didn't answer. Talking would give away my exact position. Instead, I studied the canyon walls, looking for the telltale glint of sunlight on metal, or the shadow that didn't quite belong. "Now that's just rude." The voice came from a different location this time, or maybe it was a different voice altogether. "My brother asks you a polite question you could at least answer. Or maybe you're too scared to talk. Maybe you're too scared to do anything but hide behind that rock." 3 brothers, 3 voices, probably 3 positions. I was pinned down and they knew it. If I tried to run, they'd cut me down before I made 10 feet. If I stayed here, they'd eventually flank me or just wait for nightfall and shoot me like a dog. Then I heard a 4th voice, younger, feminine. "Tommy! Jeb, leave him alone, he's just a traveler. Stay out of this, Annie." One of the brothers, Tommy or Jeb, I couldn't tell, shouted back. "This is man's business," read Annie, Murphy's girl, my possible way out. "He doesn't have anything worth taking." Annie's voice was closer now, coming from a ledge maybe 50 feet up on the left wall. "Look at him. His boots are held together with wire. His clothes are rags. You're going to kill him for nothing." "Principle of the thing," another brother called out, this voice older, meaner. "Can't have people thinking they can just waltz through our canyon without paying the toll." "What toll?" Annie shot back. "You already took everything from the last 3 groups that came through. What's one more dead man going to prove?" I saw my chance. While they were arguing, I moved, not forward or back, but up. The canyon walls weren't entirely vertical. There were handholds, ledges, places where the stone had cracked and crumbled. I started climbing, the Sharps slung across my back, my wounded chest screaming with every pull upward. "Hell, he's climbing!" The first voice again, younger, probably the hothead of the group. A shot rang out, close enough that I felt the air displacement. I kept climbing. Another shot, and this time the bullet struck the stone 6 inches from my left hand, sending fragments into my face. I tasted blood but didn't stop. "Jeb, you idiot! Don't waste ammunition!" The older voice, angry now. "Tommy, circle around. Cut him off at the north ledge." I could hear boots scrabbling on stone. Someone else was climbing now, trying to intercept me. But I'd spent 3 weeks walking through hell. I'd survived Bone Valley. I'd crossed 230 miles of wasteland that should have killed me a dozen times over. I wasn't going to die in this canyon. Not today. Not when I was this close. My hand found purchase on a ledge, and I hauled myself up just as a figure appeared to my right. A young man, maybe 20, with wild blonde hair and a Colt revolver in his hand. This had to be Jeb, the youngest brother. Our eyes met for a split second, and I saw surprise there, maybe even fear. He was fast, but I was desperate. My hand went to my own Colt, drew it in one smooth motion that felt more like instinct than conscious thought. We fired simultaneously. His bullet went wide, mine didn't. He made a small sound, almost like surprise, and then he was falling, tumbling end over end down the canyon wall until he hit the floor with a sound I'll never forget. "Jeb!" The scream came from two directions at once, the other brothers. "You son of a bitch, you killed my brother!" I didn't wait to hear more. I kept climbing, faster now, reckless, until I reached a wide ledge about 80 feet up. From here, I could see the whole canyon spread out below, and I could see them. Two men, both climbing toward me from different directions. One was massive, easily 6'4", with a black beard and a rifle. The other was leaner, quicker, with a scarred face and two pistols on his hip. These would be the older brothers, the dangerous ones. And higher up, on a ledge above them all, I saw her, Red Annie. Just a slip of a girl, maybe 18, with copper-colored hair that caught the light. She held no weapon. She just watched, her face pale and stricken. The big one, I assumed he was Tommy, reached a position about 40 feet below me and brought his rifle up. I didn't give him time to aim. I swung the sharps around, took half a second to line up the shot and fired. The rifle's roar was deafening in the enclosed space. Tommy's rifle flew from his hands, and he howled in rage. I'd hit the weapon, but not the man. But the sound of the sharps firing had an unexpected effect. The third brother, the scarred one, stopped climbing. He'd heard that boom, knew what it meant. A sharp's rifle could punch through a man like he was paper. One shot was all it would take. "All right," Scarface shouted up at me. "All right, stranger. You got sand, I'll give you that. You killed Jeb, and that's gonna have to be answered for. But maybe we can work something out." "Like what?" I called back, keeping the rifle trained on him. "A trade. A deal. You did us a favor, actually. Jeb was always the stupid one, always running his mouth, getting us into trouble. Maybe we let you pass through in exchange for that sharps. That's a hell of a rifle. Worth more than the toll anyway." I didn't believe him for a second. The moment I handed over my weapon, they'd kill me. But I needed to buy time. Needed to think of a way out of this that didn't end with me dead on the canyon floor. That's when Red Annie spoke up again. "Jack." Her voice was quiet but clear. "Let him go." "What?" The scarred brother, Jack, looked up at her in disbelief. "Let him go. He's not carrying anything worth taking. He killed Jeb in self-defense, and..." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. "And I'm tired of this. Tired of watching people die, tired of living like this. Let him go, or I'm leaving. For real this time, and you know what that means." The silence that followed was heavy as stone. I didn't understand what she meant by that last part, but clearly Jack did. He stared up at her for a long moment, then looked at Tommy, then back at me. Some kind of calculation was happening behind his eyes. Finally, he spat on the ground. "Fine. Take your rifle and get the hell out of my canyon, but know this, stranger. You got a debt now, a blood debt. And someday, somewhere, the Maddox brothers are gonna collect." I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I started moving along the ledge, working my way east, keeping my rifle ready and my eyes on both brothers. They watched me go, but didn't raise their weapons. And as I passed below Annie's position, she called down to me. "Where are you going? Where are you headed that's worth dying for?" I stopped, looked up at her. In the thin light filtering down from above, she looked like a ghost herself, pale and insubstantial, caught between worlds. "Carrion's Gate," I said, "to kill the man who murdered my family." She nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense. "Then I hope you make it, and I hope when you do, you make him suffer." It took me 6 more hours to navigate through the rest of Blackwater Canyon, moving from ledge to ledge, always expecting a bullet in the back. But Jack was true to his word. The brothers let me pass. When I finally emerged on the eastern end, the sun was setting. painting the wasteland in shades of red and gold. I'd made it through, but the cost was another man's life on my conscience, another ghost to add to the collection. I didn't know Jeb Maddox, didn't know if he had people who loved him, dreams he'd never fulfill. All I knew was that he'd tried to kill me, and I'd killed him first. In the wasteland, that was the only math that mattered. 140 miles to Carrion's Gate, 40 days on foot, walking through hell. And somewhere ahead, in a town built on bones and bad intentions, Silas Crane waited. I started walking again, one foot in front of the other, as the stars came out overhead. 3 days east of Blackwater Canyon, I came across something I hadn't seen since leaving Salvation Creek. Other people. The settlement wasn't on any map Murphy had shown me. It wasn't really a settlement at all, more like a collection of tents and lean-tos clustered around an old mission church, itself half collapsed and surrendering to the desert. Maybe 40 people lived there, maybe 50. Hard to tell. They moved like shadows, thin and wary, watching me approach with eyes that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by anything anymore. A man stepped out to meet me, tall and gaunt, dressed in the tattered remains of a priest's cassock. His hair was long and gray, his beard unkempt, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He raised one hand in greeting. "Welcome, traveler. I am Father Ezekiel. You found New Canaan." He looked me over, lingering on the Sharp's rifle, the wound scar, my worn-through boots. "You're hunting someone." Everyone in this damn wasteland seemed to know I was hunting someone just by looking at me. "How can you tell?" "Because only 3 kinds of people walk this desert," Father Ezekiel said. "The lost, the hunted, and the hunters. And you don't move like a man who's lost." He gestured toward the church. "Come, share our fire, rest. The desert will still be there in the morning." I should have kept moving. Every day I delayed was another day Crane had to disappear deeper into whatever hole he'd crawled into. But my supplies were running low again, and the prospect of human company, even desperate, half-starved company, was appealing after weeks of nothing but sand and silence. The people of New Canaan had gathered around a fire pit in front of the church. They were a mix of refugees from all the places Crane's railroad had destroyed. Farmers who'd lost their land, ranchers forced out, townspeople who'd watched their homes burn. One woman had a brand on her cheek, the letter T for thief, though she swore she'd never stolen anything. A man was missing his right hand, taken by Crane's men when he'd refused to sign over his deed. Another had scars across his back from a whipping. They were the wreckage of Silas Crane's empire, the collateral damage, the people nobody remembered or cared about. "We heard about your homestead," Father Ezekiel said as we ate. Thin stew made from desert plants and whatever small game they could trap. "Bitter Creek Valley. You were the one who wouldn't sell, the one who held out the longest. You knew about it? News travels, even out here, maybe especially out here. The downtrodden and forgotten, we have our own network. Word came through about 3 months ago. A family burned out, woman and child killed, man shot and left for dead." He looked at me with something like wonder. "But you didn't die. You walked out of your grave and started walking east, toward Crane, toward revenge." One of the women, the one with the brand, spoke up, her voice hoarse. "Is it true? Are you really going to kill him?" The conversation around the fire stopped. Everyone was looking at me now, waiting for my answer. I saw hope in their eyes, dangerous hope, the kind that could break a person if it proved false. "I'm going to try," I said honestly. "But I'm just one man, and he's got an army." "You're more than one man," Father Ezekiel said quietly. "You're every person he's ever destroyed walking on 2 legs. You're vengeance in human form. And that," he smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "That's a kind of power all its own." That night I slept in the ruins of the church, under a roof that was more sky than shelter. I dreamed of Emma again, but this time the dream was different. She wasn't reaching for me. She was pointing, her small hand extended toward the east, toward something I couldn't see. When I woke, Father Ezekiel was sitting beside me in the pre-dawn darkness. "I'm going to tell you something," he said. "Something you need to know before you reach Carrion's Gate." He pulled out a rolled piece of paper, a letter, old and stained. This came through a month ago from a woman named Vera Kane. She said if a man matching your description ever came through, I should give you this. Vera, the woman from Salvation Creek. My hands shook as I unrolled the letter and read by the light of my sulfur match. Tobias Mercer. If you're reading this, you made it through Bone Valley. You made it through the canyon. You're still alive, which means you're tougher than I gave you credit for. There are things you need to know about Carrion's Gate. Things I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure you'd make it this far, and I didn't want to burden a dying man with information he'd never use. Carrion's Gate isn't just a town, it's Crane's fortress. He built it 15 years ago, back when the railroad was just starting to expand. It's where he keeps his wealth, his records, his secrets. It's protected by 50 men, the Scorpions, his private army. They're not outlaws or drifters, they're professional killers, military trained, loyal unto death. You won't be able to shoot your way in, but there's a way. There's always a way. Crane has a daughter, her name is Eliza. She's 16 years old, she doesn't know what her father does, or if she does know, she doesn't accept it. She's kept isolated in Carrion's Gate, never allowed to leave, never allowed to see the destruction her father leaves in his wake. She's innocent in all this. Remember that. Once a month, Crane sends her out with an escort to the old Spanish chapel 3 miles north of Carrion's Gate. She goes there to pray. It's the only time she's outside the fortress walls. That's your window. That's your chance. But here's what I need you to understand, Tobias. If you hurt that girl, if you use her as a hostage or harm her in any way, you become the monster. You become Crane. The Wasteland has already taken so much from you. Don't let it take your humanity too. Make him pay, but do it right. I read the letter 3 times, then burned it in my match flame and scattered the ashes. Father Ezekiel watched me in silence. "What will you do?" he asked finally. "What I have to," I said. "But I won't hurt the girl. She's innocent." "There are no innocents in this story," Father Ezekiel said. "Not anymore. We're all guilty of something, survival, if nothing else." He stood, helped me to my feet. "But I believe you, Tobias Mercer. I believe you'll try to do it right. And for what it's worth, we'll be praying for you. All of us, every soul in New Canaan. We'll pray that you succeed where we failed. We'll pray that you're the bullet fate fired at Silas Crane's heart. The people of New Canaan gave me what they could. More food, another canteen of water, a blanket that was more whole than fabric, but still helped against the cold desert nights. As I prepared to leave at dawn, the woman with the brand came forward and pressed something into my hand. A small wooden cross carved crude but with care. "My daughter made this," she said, "before Crane's men took her. I don't know if she's alive or dead, but if you get to him, if you make him answer for everything he's done," her voice broke, "make him answer for her too, for all the daughters, all the children." I promised I would. And then I walked away from New Canaan, carrying the weight of their hopes like stones in my pockets. 120 miles to Carrion's Gate, maybe 30 days of walking left if I pushed hard, if I didn't die first, if the desert didn't claim me, if the Scorpions didn't find me before I found Crane. But for the first time since I started this journey, I had more than just revenge driving me forward. I had purpose, a plan, a chance, slim as a knife blade, but real. Crane had a daughter, an innocent caught in the middle of her father's sins, and once a month she left the fortress walls to pray at a chapel. The pieces were falling into place. The end game was coming into view, and somewhere ahead, in a town built on suffering and stolen land, Silas Crane was about to learn that some debts can never be paid in full. They can only be paid in blood. The territory changed as I walked deeper east. The open desert gave way to broken country, arroyos and mesa formations, ancient volcanic stone the color of dried blood. This was Scorpion land, and I could feel it in the air itself. A tension like the moment before lightning strikes. I'd been walking for 27 days now, My boots had finally given up entirely. I'd wrapped my feet in strips torn from my blanket and kept going. The wound in my chest had healed as much as it ever would, leaving a puckered scar that ached when it rained. Not that it rained much in the Wasteland. It was mid-afternoon on the 28th day when I saw the rider. He came from the north, moving fast, a plume of dust rising behind his horse. I was in the open with nowhere to hide, so I did the only thing I could. I stopped walking, laid the sharps across my knees, and waited. Running would mark me as prey. Standing my ground might mark me as crazy enough to be dangerous. The rider slowed as he approached, and I got my first good look at him. He was younger than I expected, maybe 25, with a thin mustache and cold eyes. He wore black from head to toe, black hat, black duster, black gloves, and on his chest, worked into the leather of his vest, was a scorpion in yellow thread. One of Crane's men, a real one, not some hired gun or local tough. This was the enemy I'd been walking 400 miles to face. "You're on private property," he said, his hand resting casual-like on the pistol at his hip. "Mr. Crane owns everything from here to Carrion's Gate. You got business in these parts?" "Just passing through," I said, keeping my voice level. "Didn't mean any trespass. Passing through to where? Ain't nothing east of here but Carrion's Gate, and Mr. Crane don't appreciate visitors." His eyes went to the sharps. "That's a nice rifle. Where'd you get it?" "Traded for it. Needed something for hunting." "Hunting what? There ain't no game worth hunting in this desert." He shifted in his saddle, and I saw another scorpion symbol on his saddle horn. "I think you're lying, friend. I think you got that rifle for hunting something specific, or someone specific." My hand tightened on the sharps, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I killed this man, others would come looking. If I let him take me in, I'd never make it to Crane. I needed a third option, and I needed it fast. "Name's Tobias Mercer," I said suddenly. "From Bitter Creek Valley, maybe you heard of it." Something flickered in the scorpion's eyes. Recognition, maybe even a hint of fear. "Mercer, the one who got burned out. We heard you were dead." "So did I for a while. But I got better." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him doing calculations behind those cold eyes. If he brought me in, he'd be a hero. Captured the man who'd walked 400 miles for revenge. But if I was still alive after everything that had happened, if I'd survived this long, maybe I was more dangerous than I looked. "You know you're not going to make it, right?" he said finally. "Even if you kill me, even if you walk every mile to Carrion's Gate, you'll never touch Crane. He's got 50 men. Walls, defenses. You're one burned-out farmer with a rifle and a death wish." "Probably," I agreed, "but I'm going to try anyway." The scorpion laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. "You got sand, Mercer. I'll give you that. More sand than sense, but sand." He gathered his reins. "I'm going to do something stupid now. I'm going to let you keep walking. Not because I'm soft, but because every man deserves a chance to die the way he wants. And you," he shook his head, "you want to die trying to kill Silas Crane. That's your right. You're not going to stop me. Oh, I'm going to report this. I'm going to tell Mr. Crane that Tobias Mercer is alive and headed his way. What he does with that information ain't my problem." He started to turn his horse, then stopped. "One more thing. That chapel north of town, the one Crane's daughter goes to. We know about it. We know it's a weakness, and we've been waiting for someone to try something there. You walk into that, you won't walk out. Then I guess I'll have to be smarter than you think I am." The scorpion smiled, a real smile this time, almost respectful. "Good luck, Mercer. You're going to need it." And then he was gone, riding back the way he'd come, the dust rising behind him like a banner. I sat there for a long time after he left, turning over what he'd said. They knew about the chapel. They knew it was vulnerable. Which meant Vera's plan, the plan I'd been banking on, might be a trap. But what choice did I have? I couldn't fight 50 men. I couldn't storm the walls. The chapel was still my only chance, trap or not. I kept walking. 2 days later, I saw Carrion's Gate for the first time. It rose from the desert like a fever dream. A town that shouldn't exist in a place where nothing should live. The walls were 12 feet high. built from desert stone and adobe, topped with wooden platforms where guards paced with rifles. Beyond the walls, I could see buildings, a saloon, a hotel, a bank, all new construction, all built with railroad money. And in the center of town, rising above everything else, was Crane's house. It was a mansion, 3 stories tall, built in the Spanish colonial style with whitewashed walls and a red tile roof. It looked like something from New Orleans or San Francisco, utterly out of place in the wasteland, but impressive for exactly that reason. This was a statement, a declaration. I am rich enough, powerful enough, to build paradise in hell itself. I watched the town from a mesa overlook using an old brass spyglass I'd found in a dead man's pack days earlier. I could see the guards changing shifts, could see the main gate opening to let a supply wagon through, could see the normal rhythms of a town trying to pretend it was civilized. And there, on a balcony on the 3rd floor of the mansion, I saw him. Silas Crane. Even at this distance, I recognized him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a fine suit that probably cost more than my entire farm had been worth. He stood with his hands on the railing, surveying his domain like a king, like a man who'd never doubted his right to take whatever he wanted. My hand went to the Colt at my hip. I could try the shot from here, maybe 1,000 yards with the sharps. Murphy said the rifle was accurate to that distance, but I'd never tested it that far. And even if I made the shot, even if I put a bullet in Crane from here, it wouldn't be enough. I needed to look him in the eye. I needed him to know who killed him and why. I lowered the spyglass and started working my way down from the mesa. The chapel Vera had mentioned in her letter was 3 miles north of town. I could see it from here, a small stone structure nestled in a box canyon. It looked abandoned, forgotten, exactly the kind of place someone might go to find solitude and prayer. It took me 4 hours to circle around to the chapel without being spotted. When I finally reached it, the sun was setting, painting the stone walls amber and gold. Inside, the chapel was simple. Wooden pews, a crumbling altar, a cross on the wall that had weathered centuries of desert wind. And written on the wall in charcoal, recent and clear, were the words, "She comes on Fridays at dawn." Someone had been here. Someone had left me a message. I didn't know if it was friend or foe, but it gave me information I needed. Today was Thursday, I thought. Or was it Wednesday? I'd lost track of the days sometime in the 3rd week of walking, but it didn't matter. I'd wait as long as it took. I settled into a corner of the chapel where I could see both the entrance and the small side door, and I waited. The night came on cold and clear. Through the holes in the chapel roof, I could see stars, more stars than I'd ever seen. So many they looked like a river of light flowing across the sky. I thought about Caroline and Emma. Wondered what they'd think of me now, this hollow, hard thing I'd become. Would they even recognize me? Would Emma run to her father's arms? Or would she see a stranger with dead eyes and violent hands? I thought about all the people I'd met on this journey. Vera Kane in her dead town, Father Ezekiel in his desperate settlement, the woman with the brand on her cheek, Red Annie high on her canyon ledge. All of them waiting for something, hoping for something, needing this revenge to mean something more than just one man's rage. And I thought about Crane's daughter, Eliza, 16 years old, innocent of her father's crimes, coming here to pray because even in a fortress of evil, even in Carrion's Gate, people still looked for God. The eastern sky was just starting to gray when I heard them coming. Horses, moving slow and careful up the box canyon. I positioned myself behind the altar, the sharps ready, the Colt loose in its holster. This was it. 400 miles of walking, 40 days of suffering, a lifetime of rage, all coming down to this moment. The chapel door opened, and Eliza Crane walked in, followed by 2 guards. But the girl who entered wasn't what I expected. She was small, thin, with dark hair and eyes that had seen more than 16 years should see. And on her face was a bruise, fresh and purple across her left cheek. One of the guards, a burly man with a scarred face, shoved her forward. "Pray fast, girl. Your father's in a mood today. Doesn't want you gone long." She stumbled, caught herself on a pew. and for just a moment our eyes met across the chapel. And in that instant, I saw something that changed everything. She wasn't praying for salvation. She was praying for escape. She wasn't Crane's precious daughter, protected and sheltered. She was his prisoner. The two guards positioned themselves at the chapel entrance, backs to the interior, watching the box canyon for threats from outside. They weren't expecting danger from within, a mistake that would cost them. Eliza Crane walked slowly to the altar, her head bowed, playing the part of the dutiful daughter coming to pray. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted around the chapel, taking in every shadow, every corner. This was a girl who lived in constant alertness, always watching for danger. When she reached the altar, she knelt. And in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, she whispered, "I know you're here. I can smell the gun oil." Smart girl. I'd cleaned the sharps just last night, and the scent would be distinct in the desert air. I stayed silent, waiting to see what she'd do. "The guards can't hear us if we whisper," she continued, her lips barely moving. "They're lazy, stupid. Father always sends the stupid ones with me because the smart ones are needed at the fortress." She clasped her hands as if in prayer. "You're him, aren't you? Tobias Mercer, the man from Bitter Creek Valley. Father's been obsessed with you for weeks. He thinks you're already dead, but he keeps having nightmares about you anyway." I shifted slightly behind the altar, making just enough noise to confirm my presence. Eliza didn't turn around. "Good," she breathed. "Listen carefully. In 5 minutes, one of the guards will come check on me. He always does. It's routine. When he comes through that door, he'll be looking at me, not behind the altar. That's your window. But you have to be quiet. The other guard is faster than he looks." "Why are you helping me?" I whispered back. For the first time, emotion cracked through her careful control. "Because I want him dead too. Because he killed your family, and he's killed hundreds of others, and he's going to keep killing until someone stops him." She paused. "And because he hits me. Because he keeps me locked in that mansion like a bird in a cage. Because he's my father, and I'm supposed to love him, but all I feel is hate." The bruise on her cheek suddenly made terrible sense. "How long?" "Since I was 12. Since I found out what he really does. I tried to run away once. He had his men drag me back and beat me in front of the entire household as a lesson." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the years of pain beneath it. "I've been waiting for someone like you. Someone who has nothing left to lose. Someone who might actually succeed where others failed." The minutes ticked by in tense silence. True to her word, exactly 5 minutes later, one of the guards, the scarred one, pushed away from the doorframe and walked toward the altar. "Hurry it up, girl," he growled. "Your father wants you back before—" I rose from behind the altar like a ghost. The guard's eyes went wide, his hand reaching for his pistol, but I was faster. The Colt spoke once, loud as thunder in the enclosed space. The guard dropped without a sound. The second guard spun around at the shot, already drawing his weapon. But Eliza was faster than either of us expected. She grabbed the heavy silver cross from the altar and swung it like a club, catching the guard across the temple. He went down hard, stunned, but not dead. I finished it with a second shot. For a moment, Eliza and I just stared at each other across the bodies. She was breathing hard, the cross still clutched in her hands, spots of blood on her plain cotton dress. She looked at the dead guards without remorse, without shock, just cold calculation. "We have to move," she said, dropping the cross. "More guards will come when these two don't report back. We have maybe an hour." "I didn't come here to kidnap you," I said. "I came here to kill your father." "I know, and I'm going to help you do it." She stepped over the bodies, moving toward the door. "But we're doing this my way. Father expects an assault on the fortress. He's prepared for it. 50 men, fortified positions, enough ammunition to fight off an army. You can't get in there, but I can, and I can get you in too." I wanted to argue. This wasn't the plan. The plan was simple: use Eliza to force Crane out, then kill him. But looking at this girl, this young woman who'd been brutalized by her own father, who'd just helped me kill 2 men without hesitation, I realized the plan had changed the moment she opened her mouth. "What do you have in mind?" I asked. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Father's hosting a dinner party tonight. Railroad investors from back east, politicians, other men of influence. He does this once a month, shows off his mansion, his wealth, his power, gets them drunk, makes deals, expands his empire." She moved to the horses the guards had arrived on. "These dinners always end the same way. He gets drunk, gets violent, and sends for me. Makes me play the piano for his guests, serve drinks, smile, and pretend everything is perfect. And when the guests leave, She didn't finish. Didn't need to. "You want me to infiltrate the dinner party? Better. I want you to be the hired help. Father always brings in extra staff from town for these events. Men to serve drinks, handle the horses, provide security. You'll blend right in." She mounted one of the horses with practiced ease. "I'll go back now, tell Father the guards got into an argument and killed each other. It'll be believable. They were both hot-tempered idiots. By tonight, you'll be inside the mansion, inside his defenses. And when the moment comes, I kill him. We kill him," she corrected. "This is my revenge too, Mr. Mercer. I've been planning it for 4 years. I just needed someone from outside, someone with nothing to lose, someone like you." I mounted the second horse, the first time I'd been on horseback in weeks, and my legs screamed in protest. "Why should I trust you? You're his daughter. This could be a trap." Eliza pulled back her sleeve, showing me her arm. It was covered in scars, thin, deliberate cuts that spelled out words. "Worthless, stupid, whore." "He did this with a hot knife when I was 14, she said quietly. "Because I spoke back to him at dinner. Because I dared to have an opinion." She pulled the sleeve back down. "You want to know why you can trust me? Because I've been dying for 4 years, Mr. Mercer. Dying inch by inch, day by day. And tonight, finally, I get to live again. Even if it's just for one moment. Even if it's just long enough to watch him die." We rode toward Carrion's Gate in silence, 2 ghosts bent on revenge, carrying 40 days of hate between us. As we approached the fortress walls, Eliza straightened her posture, smoothed her dress, arranged her face into a mask of calm obedience. The transformation was startling. She went from a fierce, broken thing to a proper young lady in seconds. This was how she'd survived. By hiding who she really was behind a facade of compliance. The gates opened at her approach. The guards recognized her, nodded respectfully. "Miss Crane, the colonel was worried about you." "The guards had an argument," Eliza said, her voice steady. "They killed each other. I managed to ride back alone. Please send someone to collect the bodies from the chapel." "Jesus," one guard muttered. "The colonel's going to be furious." "Then we won't tell him until after his dinner party," Eliza suggested sweetly. "No need to ruin his evening with business matters." The guard considered, then nodded. "Smart thinking, miss. We'll handle it quiet-like." We passed through the gates, into Carrion's Gate itself, and for the first time in 40 days, I was inside the fortress. I was inside Silas Crane's world. The place where he felt safe. The place where he'd never imagined his past would catch up to him. Eliza dismounted in front of a large stable, and a young stable boy ran up to take the horses. She turned to me, and for just a moment her mask slipped and I saw the real girl underneath. Terrified, determined, and utterly ruthless. "Tonight," she whispered, "when I come to the main parlor to play piano, that's when. Everyone will be drunk, the guards will be distracted, and I'll make sure Father is positioned where you need him." She gripped my arm. "Don't miss, Mr. Mercer, because if you do, we're both dead. And everything. Your walk, your pain, your dead family. It'll all be for nothing." "I won't miss," I promised. She nodded and walked away toward the mansion, once again the dutiful daughter. I watched her go, then turned to survey the compound I'd spent 40 days walking toward. Somewhere in this fortress of stone and sin, Silas Crane was preparing for a dinner party, never knowing that death itself had just walked through his front gate. Tonight, the devil would pay his due. Tonight, the 400-mile walk would end in gunfire and blood. Tonight, Tobias Mercer and Silas Crane would serve up revenge as the final course. The servants' quarters smelled of sweat, cheap tobacco, and desperation. I'd been given a black vest and white shirt, the uniform of the hired help, and told to report to the main house at sundown. The other temporary staff were what you'd expect: drifters, down-on-their-luck cowboys, men who'd take any work that paid. Nobody asked questions. In Carrion's Gate, everyone had secrets. I cleaned up as best I could in the communal basin, trimming my beard with a borrowed razor, slicking back my hair. The wound scar on my chest was still visible, but the vest covered it. In the cracked mirror, I barely recognized myself. I'd left Bitter Creek Valley, a farmer with a family and a future. I'd walked 400 miles to become this, a hollow thing in servant's clothes carrying death in my pocket. The Colt was concealed in the back of my waistband, hidden by the vest. The sharps I'd left hidden in the stable, wrapped in burlap. I'd only get one chance at this, one shot. Miss and Eliza and I would be dead before we hit the ground. The main house was even more opulent inside than out. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings. The floors were polished marble imported from God knows where. The furniture looked like it belonged in a European palace, not a fortress in the middle of the wasteland. This was what Crane had built with blood money, a monument to his own greed, perched on top of graves. The dinner party was already in full swing when I arrived. 20 guests, maybe 25, all men in expensive suits. Railroad investors from Denver and San Francisco, politicians from the territorial capital, bankers, lawyers, the kind of men who never got their hands dirty but profited from the dirt others did. And there, at the head of the table, was Silas Crane. He was bigger than I remembered from that night in the firelight. 50 years old, with gray at his temples and the kind of face that looked distinguished, until you saw the cruelty in the eyes. He wore a burgundy jacket that probably cost more than I'd made in a year of farming, and he laughed loud and easy, the sound of a man who'd never faced consequences for anything. I served drinks, brought out plates of food I couldn't name, kept my head down and my eyes sharp. The guests talked business, railroad expansion, land acquisition, dealing with the local resistance. They spoke about burned homesteads and displaced families the way other men might discuss the weather. Casually, carelessly, as if the people whose lives they were destroying weren't real. Around 9 o'clock, after the main course, Crane stood and tapped his wine glass for attention. "Gentlemen," his voice was smooth, practiced, "I hope you've enjoyed the meal. But now, I'd like to present some entertainment. My daughter, Eliza, has been studying piano. She'll play for us." There was polite applause as Eliza entered the room. She wore a blue dress that covered the scars on her arms, and her hair was arranged to hide the bruise on her cheek. She looked like exactly what Crane wanted these men to see. A refined young lady, proof that he was civilized, cultured, a gentleman despite his reputation. But when her eyes met mine across the room, I saw the truth, the rage, the hate, the 4 years of planning that had led to this moment. She sat at the grand piano in the corner of the room and began to play. I didn't know the piece, something classical, complex, beautiful. Her fingers moved across the keys with practiced grace, and the music filled the room like smoke, hypnotic and dark. I positioned myself near the liquor cabinet, just behind and to the left of Crane's chair. From here, I had a clear shot. My hand drifted toward the Colt at my back, fingers itching to draw, to end this, to make the man pay for Caroline and Emma and everyone else he'd destroyed. But Eliza had said to wait. To wait until the right moment. So I waited, hand trembling, while she played and Crane smiled and the guests applauded. The piece ended. Crane stood walking toward his daughter. Magnificent, my dear. Simply magnificent. He put his hand on her shoulder, a gesture that might have looked paternal to the guests but made Eliza flinch. Play another, something cheerful this time. Of course, father. Her voice was steady, but I could see her jaw clenched tight. She began another piece, faster, more aggressive, and as she played, she began to sing, something I hadn't expected. Oh, the crows in the valley, they wait for their feast. They wait for the dying, they wait for the beast, they wait for the reckoning, they wait for the fall. They wait in the darkness for the mighty to fall. It was an old folk song, one I'd heard sung around campfires. But Eliza changed the words, making them sharper, more pointed. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Crane's smile faltered. Oh, the beast built his castle on bones and on blood. He thought he was mighty, he thought he was good, but the crows in the valley, they know every sin. And when darkness comes calling, the crows will come in. Crane's hand tightened on her shoulder. That's enough, Eliza. But she kept playing, kept singing, her voice rising with each verse. Oh, the beast had a daughter who lived in his cage, who died every morning, who burned with her rage, but the crows told her secrets. They showed her the way. And tonight, finally tonight, the beast has to pay. She hit a final crashing chord. The room went silent, and then Eliza stood, turned to face her father, and smiled. Hello, Father. I'd like you to meet someone. Every head in the room turned toward me. Crane's eyes locked on mine, and I saw recognition dawn. Confusion first, then disbelief, then fear. Tobias Mercer, he breathed. But you're dead. I killed you. You tried, I said, my hand closing on the Colt. But I walked out of that grave, walked 400 miles through the wasteland, walked through Bone Valley and Blackwater Canyon and every hell the desert could throw at me. And now I'm here. The guests were on their feet now, some reaching for concealed weapons, others backing toward the doors. Crane held up a hand. Wait, everyone, wait. He studied me with new eyes, calculating, appraising. 400 miles, on foot, after taking a bullet to the chest. He actually smiled. That's impressive, Mr. Mercer, truly impressive. The kind of determination I respect. I don't want your respect, I said, drawing the Colt. I want you dead. Of course you do. You've earned it, I suppose. Crane moved away from Eliza, spreading his arms wide. So do it. Shoot me. Take your revenge. But first, answer me one question. What happens after? You kill me. My men kill you. Maybe you're fine with that. You look like a man who's already dead. But what about Eliza? What about my daughter who clearly helped you? What about all these witnesses? He gestured to the terrified guests. You'll make her an accomplice to murder. The law will hang her. I hesitated. I hadn't thought past this moment. Hadn't considered anything beyond putting a bullet in Crane's heart. And he saw that hesitation, seized on it. Or, Crane said softly, we make a deal. You want me dead? Fine. But let's do it properly. A duel. Old-fashioned, legal, witnessed by everyone here. We go outside, take 10 paces, turn and fire. I win, you die, and Eliza lives. You win, I die, and you walk away free. These gentlemen here, he gestured to the guests, will testify it was a fair fight. No murder charges, no hanging. Father, no. Eliza started, but Crane cut her off. Quiet, girl, this is between men. He looked back at me. What do you say, Mr. Mercer? Do we do this right? Or do you shoot me down like a coward and doom my daughter in the process? It was a trap. It had to be a trap. Crane wouldn't suggest a duel unless he was confident he'd win. But what choice did I have? If I shot him here, I'd hang. Eliza would hang. And everything I'd walked 400 miles for would turn to ash. Fine, I said, a duel. But if you try anything, if any of your men interfere, I'll kill everyone in this room. Crane smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. We walked outside into the courtyard, Crane's guests following like spectators at a sporting event. Someone brought pistols, matched dueling pieces, .45 caliber, ornate but deadly. Eliza stood to one side, her face pale, her hands clasped tight. She'd known this would happen, I realized. She'd known her father would turn it into a game. The rules were explained. 10 paces, turn and fire, 1 shot each. If both missed, we'd reload and try again. Crane won the coin toss and chose his position, putting his back to the mansion, putting me facing west into the setting sun. Another advantage for him. We stood back to back. I could feel his breathing, calm and steady. A man who'd done this before. A man who'd killed in duels and walked away laughing. 10, someone shouted. We stepped. 9. My heart was pounding. This was it. Everything I'd suffered, everyone I'd lost, it all came down to this. 8. Caroline's face flashed in my mind. Emma reaching out to me. 7. Vera Kane in her dead town. Father Ezekiel in his desperate settlement. 6. The woman with the brand on her cheek. Red Annie in her canyon. 5. 400 miles. 40 days. A lifetime of rage. 4. The gun felt heavy in my hand. Heavier than it ever had. 3. I thought about Murphy telling me to make this shot count for everyone Crane had destroyed. 2. I thought about Eliza's scars, her bruises, her 4 years of planning. 1. And I thought about the fact that some men don't deserve to live. Turn. I turned fast, the dueling pistol coming up smooth and instinctive, my body moving before my mind could catch up. The setting sun was in my eyes, just like Crane had planned, turning him into a silhouette against the mansion wall. But he'd made one critical mistake, one oversight in his perfect trap. He'd assumed that after 400 miles of walking, after 40 days of suffering, after everything I'd endured, I'd be slow, weakened, easy to beat. But the wasteland had burned away everything soft in me, every ounce of fat, every moment of hesitation, every shred of the man I used to be. What was left was something harder, faster, and infinitely more dangerous than Silas Crane had calculated. We fired simultaneously. His bullet passed so close to my head, I felt the wind of it kiss my cheek. But mine flew true. It took him high in the chest, almost exactly where his man had shot me all those weeks ago on my burning property. The symmetry was poetic. Crane stumbled backward, hit the mansion wall, and slowly slid down, leaving a dark smear on the white paint. The dueling pistol fell from his hand and clattered on the stones. For a moment, the courtyard was absolutely silent. Then the guests erupted, some shouting, some running for the gates, some just standing frozen in shock. But I wasn't looking at them. I was walking toward Crane, drawing my own Colt from my waistband just in case. This wasn't over until I was sure, until I looked him in the eye and knew it was finished. Eliza reached him first. She knelt beside her father, and for a moment I thought she might be crying. Then she spoke, her voice cold and clear. "This is for every time you hit me, for every scar, for every night I prayed for the courage to kill you myself." She looked up at me. "Is he dying?" I knelt beside Crane, checked the wound. The bullet had gone through his lung. He'd bleed out in minutes, drowning slowly in his own blood. "Yes." "Good." She stood, brushing off her dress. "Mr. Mercer, I believe we had an agreement. You killed him in a fair duel witnessed by 24 men. You're free to go." But Crane was trying to speak, blood bubbling at his lips. I leaned closer, had to hear this, had to hear what the devil had to say in his final moments. You walked 400 miles. His voice was a wet whisper. For what? For revenge? For justice? He actually tried to laugh. It doesn't. Bring them back. Your wife, your daughter, they're still dead. You're still alone. You spent 40 days in becoming the killer, and for what? For this, I said simply. For this moment. For looking in your eyes and knowing you'll never hurt anyone else again. Fool, Crane breathed. You think, I'm the only one. Railroad has 100 like me, 1,000. You kill me. Someone else takes my place. Your revenge changes nothing. Maybe, I agreed. But you're still dead and I'm still alive. That's enough. His eyes were glazing over now, the light fading. Eliza, he whispered. Daughter, I'm sorry. I tried to make you strong. You made me hate you, she said flatly. That's what you made me. Now die, father. Die knowing your empire dies with you. Silas Crane tried to speak one more time, but only blood came out. Then his eyes went empty and his body went still. And the man who'd burned my home and killed my family was finally truly dead. I stood up, feeling Nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Not even relief. Just a vast, yawning emptiness where rage had burned for 40 days. Crane was right about one thing. Killing him hadn't brought Caroline and Emma back. It hadn't undone anything. All it had done was stop him from destroying anyone else's life the way he'd destroyed mine. The guests were scattering now, mounting horses, fleeing into the night. Smart men, getting away before questions were asked. But one man stayed. A gray-haired banker I recognized from the dinner table. He approached slowly, hands visible. No threat. "That was a legal duel," he said. "Properly witnessed. I'll testify to that if needed. And for what it's worth, Mr. Mercer, Crane had it coming. Everyone here knew it." He looked at Eliza. "What will you do now, Miss Crane? With your father dead, you're his sole heir. Everything he owned, the house, the railroad contracts, the bank accounts, it's all yours now." Eliza looked at the mansion, at the fortress her father had built on bones and blood. Then she looked at me. "Burn it," she said. "Burn all of it. The house, the contracts, everything. Miss Crane, that's millions of dollars. I said burn it." Her voice was sharp as broken glass. "I don't want his money. I don't want his empire. I want it gone. All of it. Erased, like it never existed." She turned to me. "You walked 400 miles for revenge, Mr. Mercer. I've been imprisoned for 4 years waiting for it. Now we're both free. Let's make sure it stays that way." We burned it that night. Eliza and I, with help from some of the servants who'd suffered under Crane's rule. We started with the papers, the deeds, the contracts, the records of every crime and shady deal. They went into the fireplace first, curling and blackening, years of corruption turning to ash. Then we moved to the house itself. We soaked the curtains in lamp oil, lit the chandeliers on fire, threw burning torches into the rooms. The mansion went up like a torch, flames climbing higher and higher until they seemed to touch the stars. By dawn, Carrion's Gate was burning. Not just the mansion, but the whole fortress. The guards had fled, the servants had taken what they needed and disappeared, and Eliza and I stood on a mesa a mile away, watching Crane's empire collapse into embers. "What will you do now?" she asked me. I thought about it. Thought about the 400 miles I'd walked, about all the people I'd met, Vera Kane, Murphy, Father Ezekiel, Red Annie, the woman with the brand. About the ghosts I carried and the weight I'd been carrying for 40 days. "Go back," I said. "Walk those 400 miles in reverse. Tell everyone I met that it's done, that Crane is dead, that they're free." I looked at her. "What about you?" Eliza smiled, a real smile this time, not the cold, calculating thing I'd seen in the chapel. "I'm going to disappear. Take a new name. Go somewhere no one knows who Silas Crane was or who his daughter used to be. Maybe I'll open a school. Maybe I'll just wander. But I'm going to live, Mr. Mercer. For the first time in 4 years, I'm going to actually live." We parted ways at sunrise. 2 ghosts who'd found each other in hell and burned it down together. I never saw Eliza Crane again. I hope she found her new life. I hope she found peace. She'd earned it. My walk back took another 40 days. I stopped at every place I'd passed before. Blackwater Canyon, Murphy's Last Chance, New Canaan, Salvation Creek. At each place I told them the same thing. Silas Crane is dead. The Scorpions are scattered. The railroad's corrupt leadership is being investigated. It's not over, not completely, but it's better. It's different. Vera Kane cried when I told her. Father Ezekiel held a service of thanksgiving. Murphy gave me that Sharps rifle as a gift, told me I'd earned it. Even Jack Maddox, who I encountered by chance on the trail, just nodded and said, "Debt paid, Mercer. We're square." When I finally made it back to Bitter Creek Valley, back to where my homestead used to stand, I found something I didn't expect. The land had been left alone. No one had claimed it or built on it. And on the spot where my house had been, someone had planted flowers. Wildflowers, growing wild and free. I never found out who'd done it, but I like to think it was Many Clouds, the old Arapaho woman who'd pulled me back from death. A gift to the ghosts, a marker for the lives that had been lost. I didn't rebuild. The man who'd lived here, Tobias Mercer, farmer and father, was gone, burned away in fire and walking. But I did build something. A small cairn of stones with Caroline and Emma's names carved into a piece of wood. Not a grave, because they had no bodies, just a memorial, a place to remember. I spent one night there, sleeping under the stars where my home used to be. And in my dreams, for the first time in 40 days, Caroline and Emma came to me and they were smiling. They weren't reaching out, weren't calling for help. They were just there, whole and happy, the way they used to be. And when I woke at dawn, the weight I'd been carrying, the rage that had pushed me 400 miles, was lighter. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. I left Bitter Creek Valley at sunrise and never went back. The man who'd walked 400 miles for revenge didn't exist there anymore. He existed on the trail, in the wasteland, in the stories people would tell about the farmer who refused to die, who walked through hell itself to kill the devil. Some stories say I became a gunfighter, hiring out to other people seeking justice. Some say I disappeared into the wilderness and was never seen again. Some say I died of my wounds and everything after Crane's mansion was just a ghost's dream. The truth is simpler and stranger than any story. I kept walking. Not 400 miles this time, but thousands of miles over the years that followed. I walked from town to town, helping people when I could, fighting injustice when I found it. Always moving, never staying, because the wasteland had taught me something. The only way to keep the ghosts at bay was to keep moving forward. Always forward, never looking back. My name is Tobias Mercer. I walked 400 miles across the wasteland to find the man who took everything from me. And in the end, I found more than revenge. I found purpose. I found people worth fighting for. I found that even in the darkest desert, even in the most hopeless journey, there's always a reason to take one more step. So if you're out there listening to this story, if you're facing your own 400-mile walk, your own wasteland, your own impossible journey, remember this: you're stronger than you think. The desert will try to break you, but it can also forge you. And when you finally reach the end of that long road, when you face down your demon and pull the trigger, you'll discover that the real journey was never about reaching the destination. It was about who you became along the way. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this tale of revenge and redemption in the Old West, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with others who love dark westerns. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember, some debts can only be paid in blood, but some journeys are worth every mile.